Lately, I've been thinking about how much I love basil. Looking at this plant, it's not enough. I need more. Come on, we gotta grow. We're gonna talk today about propagation. Propagation is exciting because you can take a plant and get another plant. Free plants, right? Let me come up here a little closer, and I want to show you something. Yesterday, we topped and pruned our basil plant. And here we have the cuttings. I put some of those cuttings in water yesterday, right after I cut them. Maybe not right after, it was probably about 5 minutes after. So these guys were sitting exposed to the air. The end of the stem that I clipped was sitting exposed to the air. Most of them are doing very well, despite the fact that they should have been put directly into water. However, this one, not doing so well. And you can see that this one has a woody stem. And I'm going to talk today about 5 mistakes, big mistakes, you might be making that's keeping you from properly propagating your plants. In this case, we're going to talk about basil. Everything I'm talking about today applies to basil. It might apply to other plants. But in the case that we're studying today, it's going to be basil because, well, I have a basil plant right here. And some clippings from yesterday. So why is it that the woody stem did not do so well? Woody stems have older xylem. The green stems have a more active vascular system. And that xylem system is what is responsible for uptake of water. So in the old stem, the xylem might become clogged with resins or air pockets. These are possible reasons. There could be other reasons. But really, we just want to take home the fact that there was 6 clippings in that bowl. Only one of them didn't survive, and that one had a woody stem. So that tells us if we want the best success with propagation, we need to make sure that we are getting our clipping at a green stem, not a woody stem. Mistake number 2 you might be making when propagating your plants is a bad cut. Have a look here. Where would you cut this stem for propagation? You could cut here, 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 or even way down here. We're going to talk a little bit about where you should cut and where you could make mistakes when cutting. The first mistake we learned was from our first lesson, and that was cutting into the woody part. So we definitely don't want to cut down there. We also don't want to cut right at a node. And the nodes are any place the leaves are growing out. Those leaves are growing out because of hormones. And we cut the top of this plant off yesterday, actually it was. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to stimulate cytokinins. We wanted to top the plant where the auxins are in higher concentration to increase the production of cytokinins. In this case, we actually want to increase the auxins because it's the auxins that are responsible for that root growth. So if we were to cut right at one of these nodes, we would be cutting into a place where the plant has a very complex vascular system. And if we cut right at a node, we're cutting the very thing that we want those roots to come out of in half. Think of the damage we're doing, not to mention the fact if we cut right in the middle of it, we're actually splitting whatever node is there in half, and we're just wasting that part of the plant that could be producing roots for us. So we definitely don't want to clip right at the node. We could clip at the top, but that would be a waste because we have all of these nodes down here. We want the most number of nodes possible. We're not going to cut the woody stem. We're not going to cut right at the node. Where do we cut? Right below the last node on the green part of the stem. That's where we want to cut. And we also want to cut to give as much surface area as possible at that spot. And if we cut straight across versus on an angle, there will be less surface area. We want more. So what are we going to do? We're going to cut on a 45-degree angle, about, let's say, maybe half a centimeter, a quarter inch below the node that we want to use as the bottom node. So, mistake number 2 that you might be making is a bad cut. And luckily for me, this video is going to have a good cut. Transition here. Mistake number 3 that you might be making when propagating your plants is not clipping off the leaves. We're talking about the leaves at the nodes, not the top leaves. You want to leave those. We're talking about the leaves along each of the nodes that we want roots to grow out of. So you can see I've picked a different stem here so that we can learn as we go. If I showed you the same stem I was using to show you your mistakes, well, you wouldn't really learn anything. So this one here, we don't want to cut down here on the woody stem. We don't want to cut at one of the nodes. We want to cut just below the bottom node that still has green stem on a 45-degree angle. But before we do that, we want to clip off the leaves. And I suggest doing it at this stage because as soon as you clip that, you want to get that immediately into water or your moist soil, whichever you're choosing to do. So we're just going to go and we're going to clip off with sharp scissors each leaf at the nodes below the top. And these are where the roots are going to form. It's important to clip off the leaves. And the reason is you leave those leaves under the water for days on end, they're going to rot. It's just as simple as that. We don't want rotting leaves. So we've cleaned off each node. We know where we're going to cut. We're just going to go ahead and do it. 45-degree angle, clip. Beautiful. Directly into our glass of water. Bloop. And we could just set it in like that, but give me a minute for another cool cut right here. Directly into the water. And what we're doing here is I just have this strainer and I'm going to put it across the top of the glass. This gives me a place to just plop that, right like that. And then what we'll do is we'll take water from here and we'll just fill it up so it's above all of the nodes. And for this, you could use a popsicle stick, drill a hole in it. You could use 2 popsicle sticks, just lay them across, put it through the middle. Lots of creative ways you could do this. I just happen to have this little strainer. Now our plant is nicely in the water, and we're going to talk about mistake number 4 that you might be making when propagating your plants, and that is not changing the water. And if we just plopped this in here and walked away, this water would become brackish, might get bacteria, fungus, all manner of things grows in still standing water. We don't want any of that because we want to keep this water fresh. The other reason to change the water is that we think of plants, we think of CO2. Plants want CO2, but plants actually also need oxygen, and the roots are going to need oxygen. And over time, the oxygen will dissipate from this water. This water is actually water that I grabbed from, that was through my Brita, just to remove some of the chlorine potentially from the water. Does it remove all of it? I don't know. I don't have a lab to test that. You could also say that there are still chloramines from the water treatment facility which don't dissipate into the air. We've done our best to make sure this is as good as possible with the tap water that we have. You could also pour the tap water into a container and then just let it air out for 48 hours in your fridge, no lid on it. That should evaporate or should mist off all of the chlorine in there, or most of it. So this is what we have, and we're now going to talk about mistake number 5. Mistake number 5 is incorrect lighting. This plant has just been through a bunch of stress. We cut off a bunch of its limbs, and we cut it off at the bottom. And we don't want a lot of intense light on this plant at this stage of the game. So we want rather indirect light, bright light, but indirect. So this is going to go just beside where my grow light is to get some of that indirect light from the grow light. We definitely don't want to scorch it. It's happy sitting here doing what it does. And I'm not going to eat this one. This one gets to live. So those are the 5 mistakes that you might be making when propagating your basil plant. I'm also going to give you 5 bonus ideas or little tips to make this go more smoothly and a little bit better, and maybe give your propagation a little better chance of being the best at what it does. Time for bonus tips. I've got 5 of them for you. Before I get into that though, while you were gone in the transition with the little swirly thing that brought me from there over to here, I was able to plant this. Amazing, huh? I actually took another cutting, and I put that into moist soil in one of these cardboard pots, trying to reduce my plastics. So it's in a cardboard pot, it's in moist soil. We'll see how it compares to this. By no means is this any sort of scientific study to say which is better, but I love to see kind of what happens. I'm the kind of guy who likes to play let's play, let's see. I have kids, I play that with them in the car. When are we gonna get there? Let's play, let's see. Bonus tip number 1, don't crowd your cuttings. So you can see we have 1 glass, 1 plant. Keep it that way. Don't put too many. You think, oh, we'll just cram these all into 1 glass. Those are now all competing for the resources in the water, including oxygen. They're going to use up more of that oxygen. And oxygen is important, as we know, for root development. It's also the reason you're going to change your water. You're not going to make the mistake of not changing your water. You've got to recycle that water. When that new water comes, it's going to have more oxygen in it. Tip number 2 is pick off all the flowering buds. Flowering buds create a different set of hormones in the plant, okay? We all know about hormones now. From our video, we talked about auxins, we talked about cytokinins. The auxins are what we want, and we don't want other hormones competing them out. We don't want them to be reduced. We want those auxins to be at peak level. So if you see flower buds, pick them off. We're talking about basil here anyways. Pick them off, because otherwise your plant will taste terrible. Also, buds are a sign that the plant is trying to move into a stage of death, where it's thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. I wanna make babies. So, tip number 3 is warmth. And it would be a good idea to get it on something warm, get it in a warmer environment. Warmth will stimulate more root growth. Warmth activates, makes the molecules move faster. We all know this. That's why water gets hot. It's actually moving faster. Warmth has been shown to increase that root development and speed it up. Tip number 4 is actually honey. And I have another cutting here that I've just put in a bowl of honey. And this is not just honey. This is honey mixed at a ratio of 1 tablespoon of honey to 1 cup of water. I've just popped it in here. I'm going to see if what they say is true, although N of 1 study. Let's play, let's see. I want to see if it has any effect on the root production of this cutting. I've heard that the bacteria, it's antibacterial for one, and it's also, honey also stimulates the root growth. And then tip number 5, don't eat your cuttings. If I was to eat this right now, the whole thing would be a waste of time. So, those are my bonus tips. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you are the kind of person who will take the advice and learn from my mistakes. Hopefully you haven't made too many of your own, but if you have, that's okay. Failure is part of the game. So, thanks for going along with me on this one. I hope you learned something. Until next time, I gotta grow.